At the height of his career, Keith Repult was the owner of the second largest pornography distribution company in the United States. In fact, he also was a top 10 producer of pornography. Interestingly enough, it was called Devil Films. Self-made millionaire, Keith lived a life of luxury. However, internally, he was addicted to alcohol, drugs, and pornography. And then something amazing happened. His world was completely changed. We'll talk about that in a moment. Today, Keith is the recovery pastor at Mission Church in Ventura, California, and with his wife Samantha own a business called Surf and Yogurt. Keith, welcome to 100 Huntley Street.
Thank you.
Your book, it's called Just Breathe, and we're only going to hit some of the highlights of your story, which is incredible, and we want to give people the opportunity to get that book. But your growing up years, they were pretty difficult. A lot of it, there was abuse, there was difficulty in your home life. Both parents married 6 times. Tell me about that very painful part of your life.
Well, it's hard to tell you about all of it, of course, because it was hard to put it all in one book. And then here we are with 10 minutes today. But I always felt like there was not belonging, because I moved from a lot of different families, and you know, I moved around from school to school, and so it was a very difficult time in my life, you know, in my childhood. But there was, you know, not having my father in my life, and not having someone to go to sports, and then moving in with my mother when she was married for her 6th marriage, and going into a very to a new era of religion in my life that I had never experienced.
Yeah, because there was God was in the picture, but it was a negative part of God going as well. And I want to talk about that and how he actually did come to know the Lord Jesus. But your growing up years, and as I was reading in the book, and I said, okay, now I kind of understand how this guy got into even in distribution of pornography, because your life was so broken.
Yes. It was broken to the point that I had well, when I was 16, my mother passed away, and we hadn't spoken. I'd only lived with her for a couple of years, and we hadn't spoken. And I was in the hospital visiting my foster father, and I discovered my mother was in the hospital. So after holding her hand, and she was in a coma, and saying "I love you" for the first time in my life to her, after that I was, I think, even more broken, and I spiraled down, and ended up with a lot of DUIs, some breaking and entries, and then headed off to California.
Yeah, I mean, you were involved in drug, addiction, alcohol, sex. You're trying to obviously fill some kind of void. Did you realize at the time that's what kind of was happening, or were you just kind of following along with the crowd?
I didn't realize it. No, I knew that it made me feel better at the time to not feel the feelings that I was feeling. So it was medicating me, and but the result was I had to move a lot. So that landed me in California, because if I had stayed in Memphis, Tennessee, which I was originally born and raised there, any longer, I would have ended up in prison. So I jumped on a Greyhound with $3 in my pocket and ran to California.
How did you get into the pornography business? I mean, again, your story is, it seemed kind of innocent. You're building shelves for this guy that hires you in a bar, and not that long later, you're distributing pornography.
Yeah, I would say it was, at the time, kind of my way out. I mean, like you said, I was in a bar trying to sell drugs, and I met a guy who I spotted a guy at the bar who had a wad of $100 bills and was wearing a fur coat, and at that time had one of those cell phones with the strap on it, and still had the cord on it. And,
okay.
I mean, the first cell phones that were out, this was in the 80s, and I went up to him and says, "Hey, do you want to buy some drugs?" And he goes, "No, I don't want any drugs." I go, "Well, buy me a drink." And he goes, "Well, get a job." So I got a job with him building shelves, and the next morning I was there, and I didn't know it was an adult bookstore, and I would begin to work for him.
And you had a skill, and it was sales. It made you a multi-millionaire. And when we come back, we're going to hear more of Keith's story. And, if you're struggling with pornography, we've always got people on the other side of the prayer line that will talk to you and encourage you. 1-866-273-4444. More of Keith's amazing story when we come back.